and welcome back to Navigating New Earth, where I am very lucky to have what I am calling one of England's national treasures with me today to answer a few questions because quite often when I watch your shows, and I do watch all of them because you're fabulous, I can see sometimes like you've got things to say and it's like you don't want to take up the time, right, from the people that you're talking with. And so I would like to hear from you today. So first off, how are you on this 5th of November?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you very much. 5th of November, yes, an eventful day in history and maybe in America too. Um, but I'm fine, and thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
I'm just absolutely delighted and honored that you're here, and I'm super excited to just kind of like get to know you a little bit more because I drove over to Burnley not so much to hear the presentation or to speak to anyone. I just needed to meet you in person and just confirm my thoughts that you were a good egg and all that. Do you know what I mean? So, which
Well,
is
I
very
hope
obvious.
that you have confirmed your thought. I don't know whether I'm a good
Yes.
egg or not.
Well,
That's
I know,
for
and
other people.
Julia, sorry.
Well, no, it's all right. I was just
No,
saying
no.
it's for other people to decide, not for me.
Well, you have very good authentic energy, I think that's the thing. And Julia was amazing as well. I was really bowled
Oh,
over
yeah.
by her energy and she's very special. And you
Oh, I
make
know.
Yeah, and you make an amazing couple. The energy between you, it's a really beautiful thing. So yeah, thank you for inspiring us all with your gorgeous relationship. Right, so 20, just give me, because I was away, I was in Malaysia at the time when it all kicked off, and I actually ended up following a bunch of American you know, truthers and being on Telegram in the American group. So I got all caught up in the whole kind of, what's happening now and Mr. T and all of that as an observer. I never was too sure. I'll talk about that at the end. But just to go back to 2020 in a nutshell, your
Mm.
journey and how you ended up, on the show, and did you feel called to share stuff? And yeah, just was it a big surprise to you, or did you
Well,
wake up with something else?
um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 2020 thing seemed obvious that it wasn't as big as everyone made out. And the response from the government at the time seemed to be a bit absurd, seeing as they were allowing people to fly in. If there was this so-called pandemic and it was airborne, the last thing you wanted was aircraft coming in with something that was airborne. Um, and we'd seen this sort of idea before in the Black Plague from years ago. I wasn't there then. I know I'm getting on a bit, but I wasn't
You
there
might
then.
have been if you were reincarnated.
Well, of course, I'm absolutely. Um, and it just seemed that it was a little bit of a nonsense thing. We had Chris Whitty come out on the television saying that this was something that would affect people 80 and above, and it wasn't really anything for anyone to worry about until the next day when he came on and said, actually, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and we're all going to die in a horrible, miserable, agonizing death. Thank you very much. And I thought, hang on a minute, you've changed your tune a bit overnight. And I started to realize that this wasn't what it was. And also, of course, this is the BBC who were telling us this. And having realized that the BBC were very biased, and I didn't realize quite how biased I didn't realize how indoctrinated that or how in bed they were with the powers that ought not be, the parasites of the world
Mm.
until then. And I think that's when I knew it's like Brexit was a wake up really for me in terms of how the press were not genuinely interested and didn't have the nation's interests at heart because they only wanted to do one side of a story. And it didn't really matter which side of the line that you were, whether you were pro or in or out of the EU. It's just that there was one narrative, and we'd seen the same thing with man-made global warming. There was one narrative, science is fixed, and we're not going to debate it. And you just saw the same pattern going again. And I thought, well, hello, okay. So I just thought, well, this is obviously not true, and just ignored it as much as. Although, of course, my viewers at the time, because I was doing entertainment stuff, And they did not like it if I was questioning the mainstream narrative. They didn't like it a bit and told me to shut up and shush and don't talk about it. Don't, don't go out on your walks and make videos because you'll kill people. And
Mm,
I said to them, there's nobody here. I'm going out and there's nobody here to kill. If I had the disease, I cannot actually give it to anybody because there's nobody. I mean, at one time I was walking over the South Downs. I lived down in Sussex, and there was a chap coming up towards me on one of these narrow paths over the downs, and he saw me and he stopped rigid and he reversed into a hawthorn tree. And I thought that's very bizarre. So as I passed him, I said, "Oh, good morning. Nice weather we're having," and just carried on. Um, and clearly, the indoctrination had got to him so much that just seeing somebody in the outside, in the sunshine, and of course, we had a lot of sunshine in that March 2020.
mm,
I just thought it was mad. So, yeah, I did. I began to see through it fairly well. In fact, I realized it was something a bit weird and not quite straight because you had these videos coming in from China in November the previous year of these people dropping down dead. And now I've been in making films and mucking about with cine and video and stuff since I was a kid.
mm,
And I've done a bit of acting and things. And I thought, well, this looks very staged. And they were calling it news. And I thought, well, that's not right either. So yeah, very early I was just sort of had that gut reaction not knowing it was going to get as big and as serious as it did.
mm.
So yeah, just ignored it
Yeah.
all.
Well, so I was sitting on a balcony in Malaysia with a friend, an awake friend who, we probably had been talking about heart consciousness opening or something when we got the messages. And we were like, what? The whole planet at the same time? That's not okay, you know?
Mm.
But obviously we went and saw people, hugging each other through plastic and as it kept going and as it was
Oh,
we were delving and discovering for ourselves more and more stuff and we were looking around and it just became more and more crazy. I guess I don't know, at some point we just there's a point where you just have to accept it, right? You've just got to kind of let go. But what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned in this whole, because we've learned so much, haven't we? We've been given so much information about so many different subjects and we've discovered so much. So what's your kind of
well, the biggest thing, I suppose, is that everything you thought was true is a lie. And to the point where you start looking around for anchor points to go, well, what can I actually say is true? Because everything seems to be up for grabs. Now, I think now, on reflection, there's a lot of stuff that is misinformation that is being manipulated to make us feel that we don't have anything to anchor to, which is not true because there are things like consciousness and who we are. I mean, the true meanings of things. But at the time, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that everything is a lie and you just have to look at what's presented to you and flip it the other side. So in other words, I mean, if they say, you're all doomed, actually, it really means you're all going to survive. That's the way I look at it. So that would be the biggest thing. But this, as you say, there are so many curious subjects to hang on to. And for me, I suppose one of the ones that it shows that the indoctrination that has gone on for so long is the smoking thing. And this does get people a bit upset because I've been an anti-smoker all my life. I could see the sense of it. When I was at school, they showed you the damage, what you did happened to your lungs, and I swallowed it all. And I thought, oh, right. And I'd never smoked. And then in my 30s, I dabbled a bit with pipe smoking with a friend of mine. And we sort of bought some tobacco and we mucked about with it. And we thought, you know what? We look stupid, actually. We look far too young. Nobody's smoking pipes anymore and all of this. And so we sort of put it to bed. Plus the fact there was this haunting thing. Oh, of course, smoking is bad for you. And we go through, then once I'm doing what I'm doing now, about a year into this, and I thought I'd got a grasp of everything that was, enough to know what what was rubbish. And somebody sent me a book called Smoke Screens by a chap called Richard White, which was published, I think, around 2019, something like that. And it looked at all the evidence for the trials that had happened to prove that smoking was bad for you. And in this, he looked at the biases that were going on all these trials and the money that was there to say smoking is bad for you, and that nicotine wasn't. It turns out nicotine isn't addictive. It's the stuff they put in it. And other people, Dr. Brian Ardis, then came out with his expose on this. And I thought, well, here we go. This is interesting. And subsequently I started my pipe again, which was great fun because the nicotine disrupts something in the medical interventions that have been given
Mm,
because we have nicotine receptors in us. And of course, people have been using smoke for all sorts of different purposes for centuries.
mm,
But what is interesting is when you mention this to die in the hard truth seekers, there is still that, oh, no, no, smoking's bad for you. And you think you've swallowed that to the point that there are still some tropes that you cannot quite crack the lid on, or you're not even open-minded to. Now, I'm not saying smoking is healthy for you, but I'm
mm,
saying that it's not the grim reaper that everybody's gone out. And also, there's some other interesting aspects of smoking that I think is interesting. For a while, you go back in time, of course, the government were making shed loads of money on smoking, and of course they still do on the tax they take. But knowing that the thing that happened in 2020 was going to happen some 20, 25 years, 30 years maybe, they realized that there was something in smoking
mm,
that might be disruptive to what they wanted to do down the line. So they started to bring in this anti-smoking thing. But here's the thing that I find most fascinating of all about smoking, and that is have a look at the packaging. Name to me one other legal substance that you can buy off the counter, depending on your age, that you can buy that has 50% of government warning telling you that this thing will kill you if you indulge. I can't think of anything else that
mm,
you can, not even bleach says in 50% don't swallow this or anything. And yet it does. And I came to the conclusion, of course, that this is hypnosis, it's suggestion, and that any damage is caused is by these big black letters on there telling you if you do this, you will die.
mm.
So I deliberately now cover up all of that. I don't see it. As soon as a package of nice, wonderful, clean pipe tobacco arrives, I cover up all that stuff. So I'm not having that message getting into my subconscious and dictating what will happen to me. It's subservient, I know, but
No,
that's
I mean, well, the thing is, it's the English language is a mind control technology. You
mm,
know, I'm just grateful that certain beings have been and manipulated it in a way to make it into poetry and to, change the frequency of it. But the way it's used by the government with, the capitalization and, I mean, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just the modern English that's been weaponized, but it's yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And it is, I was going to ask you, so isn't it interesting that they made so much money and then suddenly they turn around and
mm.
demonize
and
it because, like you
and
said,
for,
they and thank God that the tobacco is there though for helping people, you
Well,
know.
of course, they're bringing in these laws to stop people from buying it because they want to kill the industry and stop people even experimenting and trying it or even having it. And that is somewhat worrying. But I don't think we'll get to that point because this will all be over by then and they would have lost. So,
Well, it's the vapes that need the warnings on them, surely.
absolutely, yes.
I mean, it's just it's insane. So, before it all kicked off, though, would you say
Mm.
that you had ever questioned anything? Were you at all, questioning the nature of your existence or anything like?
Oh, yes. I mean, ever since I was a young lad, I remember buying a number of self-help books to try and understand who I was. My dad used to have some old yoga books and some questioning books about who we are, the spirit inside us, and this sort of thing. Neither of my parents were religious in the way that, went to church or anything like that. So I wasn't indoctrinated with any of that nonsense. So I used to read a little bit about what from my dad's books, I suppose, because I like reading, which was a blessing. And so I had that sort of feeling that the subconscious mind or the source or whatever you want to call it was part of our consciousness and a deeper level. And that was at 18. But
Mm,
you get a job, you start having interest. For me, I was interested in filmmaking and acting, and they became the things that I wanted to do. And so these other sort of more spiritual ways disappeared for a long while. But I suppose I've always felt like I wasn't part of the human race. I've always had that sense that I don't know why I'm here amongst this lot, because they seem to be interested in things that never really appealed to me, like football or things that mass people would do. And I always would find myself, if they said, "Oh, you must see this film or that film," or I remember the Harry Potter phase, and then I would be on a train and I'd see adults reading a children's book, which I thought was a bit weird, because it wasn't like it was Lord of the Rings or a proper piece of literature, but it was Harry Potter,
mm.
which is poorly written, really, and is full of old tropes from other books. And so I don't understand this. So everyone was then, when the films were made, they were all going, "Oh, you've got to go and see this," and I wouldn't. I haven't. And so anytime people say en masse, there's this sort of hype to go and see something, I just found I always used to go the opposite way. And I think that's
Did you
been the
listen to like
same.
alternative music and stuff when you?
Well, it depends what you call alternative music, because my sense of music is very strange. I used to love the incidental music used in television series and films. Because I used to love filmmaking, I was aware how mood music would change and affect people. So I became very fascinated with the certain types of music within the film, because that was very much my thing. So while my sister was very much into listening to Radio One, I would be buying up these old mood music tapes for cinemakers or for filmmakers on the sort of on an amateur level, and she thought I was completely bonkers. Um, so it was music that not many people really had paid any attention to, which is
But that's
I mean,
cool.
it's quite weird now when I think back. But I wasn't your average child. That was the thing.
But I think that's obvious from what you're doing now. You're not an average Brit, because it's amazing how few people actually want to put themselves out there, put the head above the parapet and all that. But I think that one of the things that I always remind myself of when I'm losing a bit of hope when in this weather, the past 6 days, 7 days, oh my gosh, the darkness up here
Mm.
in Lancashire, it's unbelievable. But I always, what do I remind myself of? I don't even know. Sorry, I got distracted by the dark, gloomy weather and
Oh
lost
yeah. Well,
train of
we've had a lot
thought.
of that, as you
Well,
say.
well, well, it's actually I couldn't even walk up Beacon Fell today. I was like crawling up, and halfway I had to say to my little dog, I can't even walk, but I don't know what's in the air. I
Mm.
don't know what's going on. Sorry, what was I just saying? I'm just totally
You were saying that obviously I must have been a bit of a strange kid, and it's done me well in
oh, and
this
what you're
time
doing now.
what I'm doing now. I don't quite know where your thought
Well,
process was
I
now.
remember where my thought is now. I don't know why I digressed around the houses with it. But no, but the point is that we look back at what's happening now. And if you start to recognize your role as England,
Mm.
one of England's national treasures, probably the biggest one. No,
Well,
really. I mean,
I,
honestly, I can't even tell you like how much comfort and and I'm sure there must have been days. I mean, I want to get to this in a minute, the criticisms and how you've come to deal with the kind of, all the comments and the emails, because it must be, I mean, it must have completely just taken over your life. But I just feel like you've had this interest in acting. You're
Mm.
just like a duck to water with it. You are the perfect person, really, in England to be doing this. And I foresee millions and millions and millions of people, and I'm sure that they're lying about the figures, but you say that you were listening to this kind of music. It's like almost as though you came in for this, and do you understand? For
Yeah,
this
no,
time. Do you feel
people
like it was for this time?
people to have said that to me, and I suppose, I mean, I've always sort of had this concept that my best work is yet to come. And every time I've strived to do certain things. So, for example, when I was a kid, I was desperate to be on television, or in films, and to either act or direct, because I am a creative person. I love to create. I love writing, and I used to make my own films, and we used to do theatre plays, and I was never one to be a small cog in somebody else's wheel. It wasn't that I wanted to be a big famous personality or anything like that. I just wanted to have the more control over things because arrogantly I used to think that I knew how to do it better than a lot of people. And that did, in a way, come to pass when I had a kids' TV series on ITV.
Oh, wow.
And people won't remember it, but in 1996 and 1997 on children's ITV, there was a program about two space aliens who crashed on Earth called Snug and Cozy,
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
it was effectively Laurel and Hardy in spacesuits, is how I sort of describe it. And my friend Nigel and I had this idea, and so we made a pilot for it and on film, cost a bit of money, and then we touted it around the TV companies. Anyway, the long and the short of it was that it did get a program, and it was aired on, well, it was funnily enough the second, I think it was the second series was aired in the time when Diana had the accident in the Paris tunnel, and we had to be changed the day of the broadcast. So I always remember that interesting thing because it sort of it dropped our numbers of
Wow.
viewers.
Oh gosh.
Um, but we made this program and up in Scottish television, and I realised that the television people were not interested in talent, skill, or even the audience. It was about making something very easy, very quick, and to make as much money out of it. And it was not. It was never about the audience, and never about what children might like. And it was run by narcissistic bastards. And that was a lesson I had to learn. But it was a hard lesson to learn because I was sort of 30-ish something, and I had spent, well, a long time, 20 years trying to get into television, and finally, it was this chance, and I realized that they're not worth dealing with. Not the crew and the other people, just the executives and the
Homeless.
people. Yeah, everybody else was really nice and doing the best they could under certain circumstances. But what was fascinating is because it was a slapstick program, and I went to mime school and I was a performer and I knew how the gags that I had written should work, and that you had to film them in a specific way. And I was trying to convey that to the director and the camera guy, and they didn't want to know. And I said, well, the gag won't work if you do it like this. It just won't work, and it'll fall flat on its face. And inevitably, a number of these things did. And I realized they weren't interested. But they wouldn't let me direct it when it came to the second series. And I said, look, we could make this really good. And they said, well, you've got no track record in television. You don't know, you've just done a bit of filming and what have you. And I said, well, let me do one episode. Just let me do one episode and then make and bury that in the middle so nobody knows. Nope, we wouldn't do it. And I realized that it was on a hiding to nothing. So I can't remember how I got to this point in our conversation now, but I did realize that that was not going to work, and that they weren't that interested in it because it was all about money and control. And
But I mean, look at the junk that kids have to watch. I mean,
yes,
our neighbours have a young boy, and sometimes he's there, and it's very thin walls. And I have to leave because of the, and I, obviously, it's through a wall, so it's muffled. But so all I'm hearing is these kind of frequencies and tones and sounds.
yes,
and it's, it's just, and I'm like, now they're watching action of these so-called, characters running, doing it,
Things.
and you
Mm.
become, it's insane, and it's there in the
And
background all
I
the
mean
time.
the sad thing is, of course, that we have wall to wall television now. And when I was a kid, we had, I think it was 2 hours from 3:30 to about 5:30, and then you had the Magic
Yeah,
Roundabout, and then it was the
brain
news.
chill stuff.
Um, and yeah, and Grain Chill and all those programs.
Lupita.
And now, of course, you can have 24/7, and a lot of it is American, and no disrespect to American viewers or anything like that, but a lot of the American stuff that came in has a certain tone, and you've got it spot on with the frequency. There's a certain tone which is not only irritating to grown-ups, but it's a patronizing tone, to a degree, in not just individual voices, but that the cacophony of the whole thing.
Mm.
And the British stuff has emulated that. So now it's all the same, and every television program is very similar in the way that you look at architecture being built all around the world. It's the uglification of everything, the
Yeah.
blanding of everything, and all the unique and interesting things. So I was making pilots for different programs once. I thought, oh, children's television is full of idiots. I'll make some other stuff. And I would send innovative, what I thought was innovative ideas. They may not have been. But I had commissioning editors say to me, this is really, really interesting. It's unique, but it won't fit on our channel, because what they want on the channel is the same bland type of content that everybody is tuned into watching. And if something was a little bit different, it would stick out.
Yeah, well, it would break
Um,
the hypnosis, wouldn't it?
it would break exactly. So that's when I got out of it and started to do stuff on YouTube.
There's so many talented, amazing storytellers and creators who will actually create cartoons that are beautiful with amazing art and watercolors and
Mm.
coming to life. I mean, the limitation. Oh, it says I'm running out of time. Upgrade to Zoom Workplace, which I already have. It's a bit strange. It's kind of telling me I think it's going to cut out in just 2 minutes.
Oh well. You can always restart it, and can you join it together?
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. I can say that. It's all I give up with all of this AI stuff. I pay for YouTube, and yet I've got no access to my comments box. Like if you're doing a live, I can't
Right.
see comments, so I can't interact in the chats. So there's
Oh, I
not many
see.
people, and it's just never there. And I've got to wonder what's going on. All right, we'll come back. So we're talking about the beautification and uglification because that's
Hmm.
something you talk about that I really completely agree with you, and it's very important going forward. So I'll send you another link.
Okay.
Okay, 1 minute. Thanks. Hi everyone, just a quick interlude. So when I recorded the second part of the video, which is joined on after this, um, for some reason it's just me on the screen and Richard talking, which is a bit sad because I love looking at Richard's very interesting set. And instead you've just got me and my wall. So I do apologize and feel free to leave if you want to, but um, it was a really nice conversation. Anyway, back to the rest of the video now. Right, sorry about that little technical hitch, but it wouldn't be a spiritual war without one. So let's go. So we were just talking about the uglification. I'm glad you brought up the uglification. So we were saying about all the ugly cartoons and even the movies, that we all went to watch Disney. And let's not even go into, what's really going on beneath the surface. But even if you look at, hold on, what's going on? Am I here?
I
Do
can
bear
still.
with me.
Yeah, sure.
Strange things are going on. It's okay. It's just changed again, the screen, but it's okay. Um, the storylines are dark. the colors, and and it's got darker and darker. So yeah, tell us about the uglification of our beautiful world.
Well, I mean, the first thing is to say if anybody's still watching the television, then they shouldn't. That's just my humble opinion, because that's where the deep state will indoctrinate you for one thing, and you'll actually forget what beautiful things are, and you'll be misdirected to thinking that it's fine to live in a grotty new build on a agricultural land in which you've got mean windows, all the houses are extremely bland with no garnishes of anything. Gardens are small, you can't grow anything in them. It's all very naff. And we people have come to accept this, but walk down the street and see what people are dressed in. Up until I don't know when it was, the 50s, the 60s, people used to wear hats. We don't wear hats anymore, and if we do, they're either American baseball hats or I'm trying to think what other hats. I mean, some
Beanies,
beanies,
beanies.
beanies, but it's all. But the way people dress in this cheap, cheerful, mass-produced clothing from China or wherever, the Far East, and nobody is very keen on dressing for themselves to work out a style, to present themselves to the world in the best possible way. People are dressing dowdy, they're dressing down, they're dressing for apparently it's for comfort, which may well be true, but that doesn't mean you can't be comfortable in nice clothes. And it's disposable, so it's wasteful at the same time, which is the other thing. I mean, they say, that we've got this problem with CO2 and all the rest of it, and yet people are, the oxymoron of the whole thing, in which on the one hand we're encouraged to continually buy stuff,
Yeah.
and on the other hand we're told, but we've got to get our carbon footprint down, so you can't go in your car or you can't heat your house, and you've got to make the choice between heating and eating, but it's all right to keep buying stuff from China or wherever that's imported.
Yep.
It's bonkers. But the colors are, I mean, okay, not everybody. This is a sweeping statement, of course. But you go out and you just see people looking dour and
Yes,
miserable. And the
absolutely.
spirit has been sucked out of them. Um,
Well, I
the
mean, also think about it though. We used to put on our smart clothes whilst we were being productive and going about our day. And then when you've come and you take off the clothes of the day and you put on your comfortable clothes for lounging around in, right?
Hmm.
But what's happened now is that there's no effort being made in anything anymore. And so it's like everybody's just at home. I've noticed as well because I was away, wasn't I, for 2 decades. I came back to England 2 years ago, and I was really surprised at how, well, lots of things, and it's not my interview, so I won't go on about it. But one of the things I noticed was that the dress, the clothing. But you're right. You look at Marks and Spencer's, and I used to go shopping with my mom. She could never find anything to wear because she's, oh, look at the colors, oh, look at the shapes, look at the designs. They're all designed with frequent, like actual frequencies that people are not even aware of. So if you're wearing it, other people are seeing it as well. It's just, you know what I mean? And people don't
Mm.
realize. I love color, and that's why I absolutely love you and Julia and the way that you dress, and there's personality.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, I mean, you see, again, when I look back at my career, as it were, if you can call it a career, but my life, for when I was 18, I ran away from home and I lodged in a house, and the lady of the house ran a amateur theatre company, and in her basement she had costumes,
Oh,
and the costumes were of all diverse costume. And every time, and I was a member of the youth club, the youth theatre there, and when we put on a play, she would be in the basement ironing the costumes, saying, "Well, you've got to look good on stage."
mm,
You've got, even if you are there to look like a vagabond, you still had
yeah,
to look good as the vagabond. People
yeah,
had paid good money to go and watch a presentation, and so you had to give them money's worth. And it was the same. I used to do extra work on TV programs, and I used to be in The Bill, Thames Television's The Bill. probably saw me.
Oh,
I was the white shirt behind frosted glass window at the end of the corridor. That sort of acting you've never
right.
seen. Or or white, you know, being a walk on, you're just there as moving scenery. But that wasn't really what worried me. Is because I was learning. I was watching the TV studios. I was watching how they made the photo because that's what I was, you know,
Yeah.
fascinated by, how they lit a scene, and what they dressed. And again, the guys in the, you see the guys that work on these programs, not the higher upper ones, but the wardrobe people, the set designers, they're brilliant. They know their business,
I'm
and
sure.
they're very good at it. And I would watch the on the bill, you'd have all sorts of villains and various characters coming in, and we would talk to the wardrobe people because their rooms was next to where the extras were, and so we would go in and see what they're up to, and they would buy leather jackets and then they would destroy them and make them look like they had been worn for a long time or been in a punch up, had been ripped or time worn, and I learned loads from that.
Yeah.
But again, it was like you can't just wear something that is genuinely old and knackered because it doesn't always look right on the camera. Same with stage design. I mean, a great film, for example, on design was, I forget when it was made, 1950s probably, or maybe earlier than that, and that is the original Oliver, David Lean's Oliver. And you look at the sets that are purposely made at freaky angles for the
Mm.
camera, to give that sort of feeling of darkness and grim and gritty and all of that.
A
And
bit
of course,
like England at the moment.
yes, but it was very stylized. And so,
Yeah.
but
Sorry.
no, England now is not style. You know, England
Yeah,
now
I'm talking
it
about the weather. I'm sorry. If ever
yeah.
hear the word dark, I just immediately just start thinking about the weather. I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I'm
No,
obsessed.
no, 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 that's right.
Please.
And of course it would be, you know, beautifully made
Yeah.
to evoke a certain thing. So costume, I got that and that sense of dressing. So when you were buying clothes or I was buying clothes and you'd look around and you'd see, well, this looks a bit naff. And then I noticed that a lot of men's clothes when I was in my 30s, so 30 years ago, were very effeminate. I saw this sort of a very feminine in the suits, in the cut,
Mm.
in the shirts, and all of this. There was this sort of femininity coming in, and I thought I couldn't wear that. Why would I wear that? Not because I was like, you know, I'm a bloke. Know what I mean? And I've got to make
All
sure you
right.
know it. None of that. But it was just taking off the masculinity of men and pushing them over in that direction. Chris, I was aware of these things, but I didn't think of it at the time as an agenda to do that. Of course, now when I look back, you start to see everything. You start to see all the jigsaw puzzles there, and you go, oh yeah, that's they were doing that then. They were doing that then,
Yes.
and so you know, much more observant of that. But the blandness and the uglification of Britain, the taking it. I mean, you know, take England for example. We went through that whole phase where, and we're still there, where to be English was a very bad thing. You couldn't have the flag because that was hijacked by footballers, by you know skinheads and hoodlums. Um, you had to be British. Now, I've got nothing wrong with being British, but that's a sort of a strange amalgamation of all the countries. But Scotland, you'd have its own national dress. Welsh would have their own
Mm.
national dress and their own traditions and customs and things. But England, it seemed no, no, you mustn't be in you mustn't celebrate what it is to be English. And
Mm.
of course, that means a lot of different things to different people. For me, England was very much, and people can take this whichever way they like, but for me, England was very much the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s British films, the sort of carry-ons of that period, the Margaret Rutherfords, the Alistair Sims, the Terry Thomases. I say, absolute shower. For me, there was a certain innocence, a certain self-deprivation, a
Mm.
certain not taking life too seriously, and there was a certain pompousness, you could say, and there was again a bit of nobility and eccentricity.
Yeah.
You don't see eccentrics now.
Well,
Everyone is the same. I mean, you do, but
what
you
no.
don't see it in the same way. Those old
Yeah.
actors, you don't see that
Mm.
individual. You look at films; they're all saying they're all mumbling in their films, and they're all very throaty down here and talking in this sort of fashion. We will get them. We will. And you, what are you on about? For goodness
I know.
sake, where's the diction? Come on, for goodness sake. And it's just the sad part is, of course, the the 30-year-olds of today do not notice it. They can't see it. And we're being pushed obviously into this ever more digital version and playing on computer games and all of this, the sort of a version of events which isn't true. And I'm an analog man. I mean, I'm using all this technical digital stuff, but intrinsically, my background is I understand how things used to be made, and there you could see the mechanics and the purpose and all, and there was a certain beauty and something to it. But
Yeah.
now, where's the magic in just swiping your finger across a screen? It's again the magic of invention has been taken away.
Of
The Heath Rob,
creation.
the creation, yeah,
All
Heath
about it's all
Robinson.
creation.
And now, YouTube has gone down the same path with AI creation videos in which you can
Oh,
effectively just say to an AI engine, can you create me a video about whatever it might be, making shoes? And the video will find stock footage, it will write a script, it will put the edit together for you and record the voiceover, and you've just pressed a button.
it's just
However, the good news is that we men and women, we spirits, we souls in these bodies prefer, and we know intrinsically when we are dealing with real people.
mm,
And there we will tolerate naff for a while,
yes.
but we crave genuine, artistic, authentic, real things. And so, even I'm afraid to say, these people who think they can just create crap
Yeah.
by pressing a button and something, relatively polished will come out. And that's the other thing. Politicians and your corporate executives are all desperately trying to be ever so polished, speak in word salads, say words that have no meaning. But you and I and your audience will understand it's too slick. This is why YouTube videos made by you and I and others are great because we're not that polished. We can make mistakes, have technical things like you do, and the audience understand and they go, "Oh, this is real life."
Yeah.
Whereas the stuff you see on the television, they cannot emulate real life. They
Yeah.
have to be too good to be true, and it's too slick, it's too polished, it's too glossy, it's too fake. And I think that's the thing. People see through it. Some people are taken in by it, but I think the good news is that doesn't, and no matter how hard they try, they won't ever emulate something that's authentic
Absolutely
because they
not.
can't. They can't do
No.
it.
No, I mean, it's like, just, I mean, my kind of bigger picture theory view, which is shared by a lot of people, that we're in a kind of a phantom parallel universe, right? So this matrix is a limited, self-consuming creation at which it requires our creative energy. But what's happening is that the powers that were, I call them the deletes, um,
I like that.
yeah, we're creating or the deleted. We're simply creating the reality that they are telling us to create.
Mm.
And the thing is, I've been thinking a lot about frequency, and it's literally about you have to sit in your house and you have to look around you at every person, animal, plant, piece of rubbish, just every single item in your house, and you've got to rate it. the frequency because and all the food, everything is it's frequency. And what they've been doing in England is it's all glossy, it looks all kind of neon and hi, good morning, and the weird sub bass in the radio in your car that's doing weird things to your cells, like it's
Mm.
just crazy. And but I think there's going to be an absolute eruption of beauty and grace and innovation and authenticity and incredible things. But I want to just jump onto another question really quickly.
Mm.
So you're amazing at, handling people and you've made me laugh sometimes with some of the guests where you're having to kind of, ad lib a bit. And I remember this old guy was supposed to be, sharing some technique about how to balance your energy or something, and it was just hilarious and you were brilliant. I actually emailed you then to say thanks for the laugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, you had Lady Sunshine on.
Yes, recently, yes.
And it was interesting. I liked what she had to say, but it was interesting when she was starting to kind of veer towards the kind of dark stuff, and I kind of noticed that you were possibly a little bit uncomfortable on behalf of the audience because you're trying to kind of juggle, aren't you, the information and stuff. But I've noticed as well. I mean, I know you do a lot of the sovereignty and the law and everything, which is amazing, and you've had some incredible guests on recently. I loved the guy talking about the blockchain thing. I do personally believe that is going to be part of what's coming, but consciousness, controlled with our consciousness, but that's the whole thing. But how, where are you now with the whole disclosure and what's coming out? And, because I think you would have liked to have had a bit of a natter more with Lady Sunshine. She did say some interesting things. So I
Well,
don't.
that's well, one of the advantages, of course, of having people to talk to on these things is the camera comes to, or the show comes to an end, and you have private conversation with the people,
Mm,
and that's where you can say things to them or ask them questions about things or make friends with people so that you can stay in contact with them, and that happens quite a bit with the people that I'm fortunate enough to have an hour on the show with, and then sometimes I might have another half an hour or in some cases another hour talking to somebody after the event. And of course that nobody sees that because I'm not thinking of the censorship of YouTube. If is this going to go, or and indeed the audience and what people have come to the video for, and whilst you allow certain variants of things, you don't want to sort of veer too far off topic, but you think, oh, okay, that could be a video, a conversation another time, if if it will get past the AI nonsense that YouTube have. So yes, so Lady Sunshine, lovely lady, with some very insightful bits and pieces. And again, as I often say to my guests, this to me is an adventure. I don't know where the conversation is going. You've been in your niche, subject, whatever your life, and you do it. I'm here open-minded to find out what it is and share whatever you want to say. So to me, it's an adventure, the hour-long conversation, and I'm not really trying to steer it too heavily.
mm.
I try to sort of keep it within certain boundaries, but really, it's down to my guest. And at the end of it, sometimes, certainly in the earlier times, I was very blown away. Now it's a different kind of appreciation for what they're saying because more of the pieces come together. Go, oh yes, I know a bit about that, but you've just solved that little question. So that's what I find really fascinating.
There was a gentleman as well you had on recently, he had a beard, he was quite gently spoken, and he started talking about like I think about, the 17th letter and Mr. T and that whole movement. And I think he said he was an Irish gentleman. And I think he said to you, oh, what's your thoughts on that? And I loved your
Oh
answer.
yes.
I loved your answer because you said, well, because and it's true, it'd be good if even if it's not true, the fact that people don't quite know, it has got the dark operators, actors, nervous and wondering what's going on. I mean, I personally am now 100% convinced it is, and we can see what's happening with Mr. T now. And I was kind of went down that path at the very beginning, but I've been wavering, because you can't be 100% about anything. There's always got to be that bit of a question, right? Because ultimately it's about saving ourselves. But I don't know if any thoughts like before we go on the bigger picture to do with Mr. T and the kind of this whole Great Awakening, Ascension um, deal that a lot of people, tons of people are waking up to.
Well, when you talk about Mr. T, as you put it, um, I guess I suppose you're referring to like the cavalry over the hill that could be coming
Um,
to save the day, as it were. Is that what you mean?
I think it's a bit more complicated. I think there's a bit more to it because I think
Hmm.
he's face of an operation, a worldwide operation. So it's not him per se.
No,
But
but
yes,
that,
I mean, like the whole movement and because it's pretty crazy how many people are coming out to support, right, for this movement, which I believe most people, if you talk to Americans, they see it as a spiritual movement.
hmm. Well, I mean, all I was going to say is that I've I've erred on the side of caution in as much as to say that if the cavalry comes, that's great, but that doesn't mean that we do nothing. So, what can we do? What can we as individuals watching this and go, okay, not all of us can go and save the world. We haven't got the red cape and the red underpants and can, fly into the air. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, da, dun. Can't all do that. But what we can do is take back responsibility for ourselves. We can make decisions for ourselves. We can think. We can have an open mind. We can decide not to accept everything that is coming to us from what people say. We can, look at it from all sides instead of just going, "Oh yeah, okay." And of course, lots of people are doing that with things like the council tax and going, well, is it a legitimate tax? Has it got validity? Is it actually just the state picking up more money from us and keeping us down? Same with, as we've already spoken about, how you dress or whether you smile at somebody or make eye contact with a complete stranger. Because I think that's another thing, engaging with somebody, even if it's an infinitesimal passing by and you say, oh, good morning, lovely day. You can do so much with very little, or what apparently is very little. And I think that's where I've tried to concentrate the videos. I mean,
Yeah.
the guests, of course, they come with their ideas, but in my monologues that I do, it is very much about us here and now, and I'll pose questions. I may pontificate about my thoughts on certain things as well, which might lead to those questions. And it is just an opinion. In people, I say this a lot. You can disagree with my opinion, and why wouldn't you? Because that's what interesting. Because your opinion might actually be there may be stuff in there that I think actually I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't thought of that. So being open-minded with each other is a good thing. But if the cavalry comes in and if suddenly, there are things behind the scenes that we don't know about which suddenly help us, then that's brilliant. And I would say that there are. It's
Yeah.
just the people who are in those positions to do that are not generally in our social circles. So we don't meet them. And this would be questions that people would put to me when I'm at events in an audience, and they would say, is it only us? Are we on our own? Are we doing this? And I say to them, look, we're in one social circle. There are millionaires and billionaires who we just don't mix with. And
Yeah.
if we do, we don't know that because they may have dressed down or whatever. But
Yeah.
generally, people have different social circles because of the type of people they are. And it would seem ridiculous that certain people didn't think like us in those different social circles, and they know they don't need to come on YouTube and
Yeah.
advertise who they are. They are doing stuff behind the scenes. So that's why I feel convinced that yes, there are people who are doing amazing work. Some people who are doing amazing work on their own or in very small groups who need the publicity, or they need to just tell people that they're working on a new server system or a new money or a new this, or they just want to share stuff they found out, will come on my show and other shows
Yeah.
of the same sort of things that we're talking about. But it wouldn't surprise me. But there's nothing I can do at this moment to go and help a Mr.
Yeah, no.
T or people like that.
No, no, but what I mean, that's such a perfect answer though, because we don't, the whole point I think isn't for people to sit and wait,
Mm.
because I believe what's coming, the way that the world's going to be operating in the future will be consciousness based in some way, and unless you are vibrating at a certain frequency, you won't be able to access a lot of the amazing stuff. But that's as it should be, right? Because that's the whole point, of what's coming. So that's such a perfect answer. And I think that you do an amazing job of, your monologues of getting people thinking about stuff. It's that's exactly, you are doing the most that anybody could do in this whole, thing that we're in. I'm waiting for the little voice to say, you have 1 minute. Because we're now back up to it's just a couple of minutes. So I will, let you go. Um, and just again say thank you so much for sharing a bit of your inner
Well,
self.
that's very kind of you.
No, no.
And well, good luck to your channel because you said that it's
Yeah.
relatively new, and I hope that having me for whatever worth it is, that it can garner some extra reviews. And I remember about a year or so ago when a few people were asking me to appear on their show, and they said, "Oh, look, I've only got this little channel," and I said, "But I've only got a little channel. It's only one person watching me. This is how you've got to treat it. I'm nobody special. I'm just a nobody YouTuber who has an opinion." And I've been very, very lucky. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future? And I think everybody should have the gumption to get up and just say what they think and not be self-centered. So more power to you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I do have some weird invisible massive resistance to it, this fear of some kind of a comeback, which is going back to just childhood stuff. So that's not,
It won't happen. It won't. I mean, I got a bit scared but the thing that makes me scared is when people say and they come up to you and they say, "Oh, Richard, you are brave," and I go, "There's nothing. But I have done very little, really. I've sat there and had a few opinions and listened to other people. That's all I've done. It's not. I haven't gone and built anything clever. I haven't done any of that. But if all I can do is to help people perhaps open their minds to look at things a different way, then we can change the world.
yes,
And
a
that's
thousand
really it.
percent. Absolutely. I mean, it's but I'll have to share with you another time my story of what happened in Malaysia because
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting.
police and the whole government. I mean, I had the health minister, it was it was insane. It was and yeah, but you know what? Proof that there are things happening behind the scenes, because I think technically I shouldn't really be around. But anyway, thank you.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah, I'm struggling with my screen. So I'm having tons of weird stuff going on with like my electric. I had flies in the house for 5 days. There's so many, and it's just awful. I feel like I'm in some like weird movie.
Must tell it
Um,
all to go. Go away, I command
I
you. Go away, evil things. Leave me.
But now I can't see the how to end like because when what happened with the video, it started off on the screen and then it just shot into the corner of the screen, which I've never experienced before. So
Is it on the bottom right hand corner? There should be a sort of stop button or
oh,
something.
has that changed the screen now for you?
Nope.
Oh, just for me. Yeah, I'm looking for the stop button, but that whole thing's disappeared. So sorry. It's so strange. All right, here we are. I'm back to the meet. Oh, it just jumped out right now. Apparently, I'm running out of time. So I love you so much. You're amazing, and I look forward to your next episode.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully, see you again soon. And please let Julia know. I'd love to have a chat with her.
Yes, I will
Well,
tell her.
okay. All right. Have an amazing rest of your evening
Thanks, Kerry.
and speak soon.
Bye bye.
Okay. See ya.